Welcome back, y'all. Another day, another dollar. You know how that goes. Before we get into it, like, subscribe on the YouTube channel if you're not already over there. Gem Music 856. And without further ado, me and Ryan are here to talk about that debacle of a game that happened on Sunday between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Where do you want to start, big dog?
Just pretty much, I felt in the beginning of the game, pretty much I felt like it looked like they were rolling on all cylinders. It looked like, they were getting AJ the ball. They were, the offense was flourishing. They looked good, they looked like they were putting some motion in there. I thought they were playing efficient on the offensive side of the ball in the beginning of the game, but then defense looked good. But then the second half, it was just a complete meltdown, man. But I do want to ask you pretty much where between the first half and this, I don't know how much of the game you saw, but between the first half of the second half, my guess is they went back to their old ways. They seem like they might have been switching up in the beginning of the game, and then the second half they just pretty much went back to their old ways. Do you think that was the case in the second half as far as the offense goes?
I don't know about the second half of the second quarter, but definitely in the second half itself,
Right.
it just seemed as though they I don't honestly I don't have an answer for why they're doing what they're doing because it doesn't make sense to me. So
Right.
it's a tough question. Um,
Hmm.
but yes, you have injuries on the offensive line, but there
Yeah.
are offensive lines in this league that are not as good as the Eagles, even as is, but they don't
Hmm.
struggle to the extent that the Eagles do. They're dead last in a lot of key categories,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like it's criminal incompetence. Um,
Hmm.
and the question is, where do you levy that blame and what percentage of the blame goes to the key contributors, such as the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, the head coach, the offensive line, like the wide receivers? What percentage of blame goes to each of those? It seems like Kevin Patullo is the low hanging fruit because as many former players have pointed out as I've been scouring the internet, the route tree is just so elementary. It's not really that hard to figure out what they're doing in the passing game, and it's not really that hard to figure out what they want to do running wise. Even though you have injuries, the lack of creativity in what plays you're calling and the timing and sequence of when and how you're calling them seems to just be non-existent.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so easy to figure out. I actually sent you an Instagram clip of Puka Nacua running a motion route, and it was actually I really liked the play. It was very creative. He was going up the middle. It was a motion, and he just went in out, and like the play itself just like Nick Foles said, it looked like a work of art. Like it just looked so good. Like he ran a really good route, got a really nice ball. Just like they don't do any of that stuff. And it's just when I look at Sean McVay, it's like he is so creative with play calling. And they are just not there. I know not the same because Sean McVay is obviously much better, but the inexperience shows and just like to me, it's like you said, Stan, it's not hard. This stuff right here is so easy to figure out. At what point we are through week 13? Like, at what point are you gonna figure it out? I mean, Jalen, if he's part of the reason why that they're running whatever they're running, then he has to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and get better. Because you can't keep running that same shit because I don't know how you do not see, pardon the language, that this isn't working. It's like beating a dead horse over and it's just week in, week out. This is, pretty much what we're talking about because they just don't adjust. They don't fix. It's like, I just don't know at what point. I understand, like you said, the injuries on the offensive line. That's a problem. I get that. When you're not running the ball efficiently, they're going to put those two safeties out. You know, they're not going to need them in the box. They know what you're doing, so you become predictable. So at what point are we going to do something? You know what I mean? The defense was on the field for 40 minutes in that game, which is crazy to me. Of course, your defense is going to get tired. And of course, eventually, the Cowboys are eventually going to score points because your defense is always out there. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand at what point are we going to make, stop being so hard headed and make the proper adjustments we need to make.
And a couple of things to kind of play off what you just said. When you said you don't understand, that's exactly the same thing that Chris Long said on his podcast that we were just looking at. He said when he looks at other teams, it seems like okay, with Puka Nacua, are they trying to ISO him up on the slot receiver? Are they trying to ISO him up on a linebacker? There seems to be like a rhyme and a reason why they're bringing guys in motion or why they're coming out in certain formations, why they're moving a certain receiver across the formation looking for mismatches. He said with the Eagles, he can't figure out what the motive is from play to play. Like there's no discernible, like we're trying to get AJ matched up on blank, or we're trying to get AJ matched up on one of the safeties. There seems to be no strategy. So if
Yeah,
somebody who is a two-time Super Bowl champion with one of the greatest defensive coaches in Bill Belichick and one of the best Super Bowl teams, period, with the Eagles. If he can't figure out what you're doing on offense as a defensive guy, then what are you really doing? And he's not
right.
the only person.
Yeah,
I feel like Jason Avant, he'll break the play down, but I don't necessarily know if he's confident in what they're actually trying to achieve from play to play. It's just like they're just picking a random play and just running it.
yeah,
I'm not saying that's
exactly.
what's happening, but if nobody can figure out what you're doing, including NFL players, current or past, then at what point can you say it's not just the fans just being erratic and irate for no reason?
Yeah, exactly. And that could be part of the reason why AJ could be. I mean, there's been rumors about AJ and Jalen not getting along. Maybe it's because he's trying to tell Jalen we need to work the middle of the field too, and not so much the outside. You got to go, you're setting yourself up for failure when you do that. You need to work the middle of the field. It opens the offense up.
You absolutely have to. And one other thing that I think they mentioned on the podcast, and mind you, Bo Allen's on there as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel I recall hearing this from other former NFL players who have been breaking down the film. They're like, at what point are they ever going to run a mesh concept where you have drag routes coming across the middle of the field? Like we mentioned last podcast, elementary things. Even if you, let's say they don't have a rhyme or reason, they just want to try new things, just try it. At this point,
Hmm.
you're not going to get no worse. You don't,
Yeah.
at this point, you don't even have to have any logic for when you're running mesh. Just run the damn play and just see what happens, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But like, it's like a whole portion of the NFL route tree is just not there for this offense. And
No.
in my mind, it shouldn't matter what quarterback you have there behind center. There are some simple concepts you should be able to run regardless of whether you have a guy that's comfortable with the spread offense or from running under center that they're just not doing.
Yeah.
Bringing guys
And
in motion, running a
right.
drag route. Why do you have like 4 or 5 hitch routes on 4th and 2?
Right.
Everybody running like a 5, 10 yard hitch route. Like, what fucking sense does that make? And then Jalen Hurts gets sacked because obviously there's nobody open.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, it's pretty ugly, man. And so how can you be that confident? Actually, when you hear Sirianni say, "Oh, why did you go for him on fourth down?" Well, I have confidence in my. How can you have confidence in your offense when you were doing the same things over and over? Like I just think it's bullheadedness, and I just think they're being very stubborn, arrogance, things like that. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, again, as I put out this disclaimer on a previous episode, when you're so in when people cannot even pinpoint why you're doing certain behaviors, then the only rational thing to think is that you're either incompetent or you're arrogant.
Yeah.
And at the very least, I'd rather it just be you being arrogant versus you being
Hmm.
incompetent, because if that's the case, you shouldn't even be here. And people get wrapped up in pedigree. And I want to make this quite clear. There's a difference between calling for somebody to be fired just because you don't like how the game went. And there's another thing for calling for accountability and possible firing when you see the same thing over and over again. And it's not like these complex things that the layman cannot understand. It's very simple concepts. It's not
Yeah.
like every team is run. It's not like you have a lot of teams running cover three, cover six, having a lot of different exotic zone coverages, and that's why your offense is struggling. But the fans just cannot see that because they don't have the all 22 footage or they're not paying attention close enough. No, these are
Mm-hmm.
very simple things that they're not doing, right? No matter
Mm-hmm.
whether you're running cover three, whether you're running cover two, whether you're running man, if you're calling the same damn plays or same archetype of plays consistently, it's not that hard to figure you out. It's just the way it goes in anything in life. Forget
Yeah.
football. If you throw,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give before we move on to the next point, a perfect example of this was the fight between Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Garcia had Tank Davis hurt. That would be the equivalent early in the fight. That would be the equivalent of the Eagles getting up 21-7. Hurt to the point where all he had to do was just stalk him and just set him up for a good move. No, instead, he did the absolute worst thing you could do, which is spam four hooks in a row. And then he got caught on the fourth hook. It's like, of course he's going to knock you down with a good hard punch. You've shown it to him three times in a row, and it's the punch he's been training for. So
Yeah.
like even with Ryan Garcia, I'm like, you've been doing this for 10, 20 years. You should know this by now. So the same thing
Mm-hmm.
with the Eagles. You've been in the NFL before being a head coach for years. Like you should know the basics. Why are you not calling um I forgot the concept. You have the tight end or the slot receiver running a straight route, and you have your outside receiver running a 10 to 15 yard breaking in route. That's kind of like the route that Chris Long was talking about to attack the middle. That's just one of many examples. You could have a smash concept as well. But again, those things are just all to the outside of the hash marks. Where is the diversity in the play calling and the route concepts you're running?
Yeah.
So
And
at a certain point, I think people, whether that be fans or analysts, have to get off of this thing like, oh, see, he won the Super Bowl, so everybody got to apologize and do all this. It's a new year. Every year is a new year. And even during that Super Bowl year, as we keep going back to all the time, we were seeing the same things early in the year until they had to what? Change. And it's
mm-hmm.
that change that facilitated the improvements that allowed us to take advantage of that Super Bowl caliber defense. But without those changes, you're no different than the Buddy Ryan Eagles of the early 90s. You have a
Yeah.
lights out defense, and then you have a quarterback where you're telling them to run around and make five plays a game. Now, obviously, it's not that bad, but in some ways it's not really that different. You're not
Mm-hmm.
giving that offense the tools to even be successful, whether there are deficiencies you're trying to cover up in certain players or not. There's basic things you can do. Geno Smith could run this defense. Geno Smith from my Raiders. For those that don't know that I'm a Raiders fan, anytime they're not playing the Eagles, I'm a Raiders fan as well. And Geno Smith could take this offense and be more effective with it than what we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing um, under Sirianni and Patullo. But if you put
Right.
Smith in this offense under the rules that they have now, the way they're playing calling the plays, he's not going to do any better than he's doing out in Vegas.
No. And I truly think this is a point that me and my buddy and I asked his opinion. I'm gonna ask yours and see if you agree as well. Right, this is a top five team, in my opinion. It's probably one of the best teams in the league. But with Kevin Patullo, the way he is running the offense, I truly think right now they're not a top five team in the league. What's your take on that?
Uh, agree 1,000%.
Yeah. So if you take out Kevin Patullo of that equation and you have, say, I think Brian Dable might even be able to run this offense better. Like it's really hard. I guess it's like I don't know what you think, Stan, but I guess it's just to bring another play caller in at this point in the year, I think is probably a bad idea because you're going to bring a whole nother playbook in like almost to the point it's like more than halfway through the season, and then you got to learn that. Would you say that's a bad idea? I would think so.
I would agree. I would say the best thing that they could do is bring in. somebody as an advisor. So the
Yeah.
same way as they brought in Matt Patricia, and I know everybody hears that name and just has PTSD. It just didn't work out. But Matt Patricia was a very, very good defensive coordinator. Even though that didn't work out, they also brought in Nick Fangio as an advisor at some point, and surprise, surprise, he became our D coordinator later. What they could
Mhm.
do is you don't have to change the scheme or the playbook, but you should bring in somebody that can help Patullo with the flow of the play calling. Like, hey, this is your system. I'm not here to change nothing, but when I see things lagging, turn on your ear, turn on your ear set and listen to me in your ear.
Mhm.
I think that would be the most reasonable thing to do at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just think he needs someone in his ear just to maybe help him a little bit because I feel like that's what he would just need. Like, I mean, I truly think we can turn this team into a top five team again. Like, if you have the right people in the building, the right people calling the plays, I just think right now they continue to do what they're doing and they don't straighten up. They're being bounced either the first or second round of the playoffs.
Oh, 1,000%. 1,000%. So I think that you have to make a change at this point because we're not in Minnesota. We're not in LA. People actually care about football here. If anything, they treat it like a religion damn near. So
Mhm.
if you're in New York, if you're in Philly, you're in these big markets, they're not trying to hear none of this. We'll fix it next week. No, they can see what you're doing wrong. It's not like they see somebody drop a ball and they're just like they all suck. No, they're looking at the play calls, they're looking at the flow of the play call, they're looking at the coverages that are being run, and they're saying, "Why are you doing what are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. And another point I also made is, my buddy told me, well, we beat the Rams, we beat the Buccaneers, we beat all the same. I was like, yeah, that was the beginning of the year. I guarantee you right now, towards more the end of the year, you're running to the Rams right now. You're not winning against the Rams. Not now. Back then you beat them. You ain't beating them now. They're playing their best football. And I truly think the LA Rams are the best team in the league right now. So
Mm.
that don't matter.
They may very well be. And I remember we were talking about the trades at the trade deadline, and I mentioned Quinion Williams, who the Cowboys picked up. And what I said was, I think that the Cowboys were a 9-win team. I think he gives them one or two extra wins. I still don't think I think they're a wild card team with him in that lineup. But what I said was I just didn't know if he was the player that the Jets drafted because the guy I remember, absolute monster.
Yeah.
Absolute monster. Like he can rush the passer, he's fleet-footed for his size and he just looks rejuvenated. And I think that's just what happens when you leave that dumpster fire that is the Jets.
Yeah.
Instead of just
110%.
instead of just ending the season, he's actually has a season now. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
he looks exactly like what I remember him with the Jets, and with him and the other guy, what Frank Clark, whatever his name is, the guy that they picked up at nose tackle.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Frank Clark.
Yeah, with those two in there, I mentioned that I said that they're still not going to be no Super Bowl contenders, but I said they're going to be better than people expected. And we still should have dusted them. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
we should have trashed them. But
Yeah.
you are not going to get away with making the little mistakes with those small improvements they made to the roster. Now, as long as they don't quit, they can get back into a game against an Eagles team. And you can't make
Hmm.
those mistakes against the Cowboys before trading for Quinion Williams. That defense was absolutely horrendous. They could not stop the run. They couldn't do anything. Now they can be somewhat stout against the run, and now that back end is just not so atrocious as it was before. But
Hmm.
if you do some of the simple adjustments that we made, you can still torch them because look what we did to them in the first half.
Yeah. 21
They,
points.
they made their adjustments, and my question for you is, and this has been a long lingering issue, do you think that Sirianni and them failed to make the proper adjustments? And I'm not talking about Patullo. I'm talking about Sirianni because
Yeah.
it seemed like Vic
Hmm.
Fangio made all the adjustments he needed to do well, defensively. They just got tired and
Yeah.
injured because they were on the field too
Hmm.
long. But why does the offensive side with the coaches, they don't seem to be able to make the adjustments?
I just think it's bullheadedness. They're continuing to think they can do something that it's just arrogance at this point. I just think they're not adjusting. I think Sirianni's part of it too. I think he needs to realize at some point. I mean, Dan Campbell, look at him. He took over play calling. He realized that, his offensive coordinator wasn't doing the job. He adjusted. Why can't he? So I think Sirianni is part of the issue as well. I mean, he's in charge of this whole thing. What is he waiting for? You know?
Exactly, exactly. And that I don't really have much more to say about it because I'm more of a results oriented person, and if I see the equation A plus B equals C, if you're not doing B, I I ain't trying to hear nothing. I know C won't happen until you fix B. And A is the defense. That's fine. B is the offense. It is not fine. And
Yeah,
you will not get C championship with a
no,
capital C without A or B. Both of them.
100%.
Both of them.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
man.
you just look at this team, and what's frustrating to me is I do think that Sirianni is a good coach. And despite how critical I've been about him over the past 3 years at the points where they've struggled, my frustration is because I don't think he's Rich Kotite.
No.
So, like Rich Kotite was just he wasn't a good coach. And
Hmm.
he took that Lamborghini and drove it till the wheels came off, and it happened quickly.
Yeah,
This is a coach who, am I saying he's an offensive wizard? No, but he's a very smart dude. So it's like,
he is.
is it
Yeah.
see to me? And again, people in the organization, the coaches, whatever, players are free to correct me if I'm wrong. It just seems as though, without any other context, you want to do things a certain way and you don't want to get up out your comfort zone. And when they took that away, instead of trying to put a square through a square hole, you're trying to put a triangle through a square hole, even though it's clear that it's not going to work. There's a
Yeah.
time and place for using that triangular piece. Now is not the time, nor do you know situationally when and how to use it. That's really the issue. They have the tools, but it's like you have somebody who's good at building the house, but they don't know how to wire the electrical work. Yeah,
Hmm.
like the house, you can live in the house, it'll be functional, but it ain't gonna be fun without electricity. And
Nope.
you're not gonna get through the winter uh unscathed. I'll put it like that.
Right.
Versus like actually getting the wiring right, i.e., the framework of the routes you're calling, the framework of the run plays you're calling them, and when they're calling them, the plays are fine. It's the play calling, the flow of the game. And you see Vic, it's like when the Cowboys would get something going, he would just have the counter to it time and time again until the defense just ran out of gas. Like that's experience. That's being flexible and malleable despite being in the league and coaching for decades now. He's extremely experienced to the point that he knows when to let his ego go and switch to something that will work better than what he's trying now.
Right.
That's what great coaches do. I think that Sirianni is a great coach, but I think that his
Yeah.
stubbornness is a limiting factor.
Yeah, I agree.
So, that's my thoughts. Is there anything you wanted to add to that? I mean, we can go over stats or whatnot, but it's Jekyll and Hyde. The first half, they look like the Super Bowl champions. The second half, they look like they didn't even remember to get off the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Not too much, nah. I mean, that's pretty much on my end. I know Hertz had pretty decent numbers, but those numbers don't matter in the second half. I mean, you can look great in the first half, sure, but you really didn't perform in the seconds. But he did have a decent game, I will say that.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, to me, it's quite simple. It's like the play calling has to change or heads got to roll. So, that is what it is. Because I
Yeah.
know that the Raiders, we just fired Chip Kelly. People don't want to hear that name around here, but we had Chip Kelly for our offensive coordinator. And it's clear that the Raiders were never going to be contenders this year, and they probably won't be so for the next year or two as we build. But even
Yeah.
though we're building a program, it was clear early on Chip Kelly, his play calling was horrible. And even a team
Yeah.
that's not going anywhere, who's trying to build, people can say, "Oh, you fired him because the organization is dysfunctional." That is true in a vacuum, but in this sense, it was obvious that he's not the answer, so he gotta go. You
Hmm.
don't keep trying to try the same thing, think you're gonna get something different. Like it was
Yeah.
so clear and painfully obvious that the play calling was just like he was out of touch with what was going on the field. Like you're calling
Yeah.
plays you have you have your eyes closed and you're not looking at what the defense is doing. Like the
Yeah.
plays
100%.
in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. It's the application.
Yeah.
So, with Chip Kelly, he had one way of running his offenses based off of his success in college. And instead of adapting and adjusting, knowing that you don't have as many people on the active roster, so you can get away with running that pace. Instead of altering, even if it had to be significantly, he he didn't learn. It's
Yeah.
the reason why he had issues when he was in San Fran, wasn't he there for like a quick second, I believe?
Yeah.
And then
Hmm.
why he had issues with the Raiders. So, you have to look at what you got and be honest. And I'm not saying it's nepotism, but these internal hires are not working.
No.
Same thing with Brian Johnson. Same thing with Kevin Patullo. Two for
No.
two, and you did not hit on either one of them. It worked when you brought in Kellen Moore, pedigree. You saw what he did with the Cowboys, and after struggling the first couple of weeks, Kellen Moore decided, you know what? Maybe it does make sense to run the ball. And he has, as Nick Foles mentioned, the ability to call a good game. He has that.
Hmm.
Once he stopped
Yeah.
being stubborn and stopped trying to get pass happy, like Andy would get at times when he was here. Same thing with Andy when he stopped trying to get pass happy and actually had a good mixture of runs and passes and things of that nature out in KC. Well, all of a sudden he goes from a guy who couldn't get it done like Marty Schottenheimer to being a Hall of Fame coach with multiple rings.
Right.
But that was never going to happen in Philly. And I'm not saying you have to leave, but
Hmm.
at some point you have to change, whether that means you getting a fresh start, which I'm not asking for, or whether that means you just looking in the mirror and say, you know what, I gotta check myself.
Yeah.
This
100%.
this 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 approach worked for me during the Super Bowl run, but during this next Super Bowl run, it's not working. I can't just depend on the way I did things in 2024 and 2023 to work for me now. Maybe it's because it's a different league. Maybe they're showing you different looks. Maybe it's different coverages. Whatever the case may be, you have to adjust and when something that worked before is not working, sometimes you adjust it, sometimes you have to scrap it. But that's where feel comes in. So maybe bringing in an advisor who can look at it and say, you know what? Maybe when I was 40 years old, I would have thought the same thing as you. But now that I'm 63 and I have a little more experience, you need to tweak this here or take this out. You need to bring somebody that has a little more experience in to not wreck shop, but just guide this young coach, very capable coach, in areas that he's obviously struggling in.
Yes. I absolutely agree.
So, that's my take. Let us know what you think in the comments. But this is why, although I do not condone the way AJ Brown went about it, this is why AJ was acting the way he did. This is the way I would feel. I just wouldn't put it out on social media the way he did. But this is what he's talking about. When it comes playoff times, this shit ain't going to cut it. And the Cowboys just showed you that this week.
Prime example.
So you can get on his ass, pause all you want to now, but when the playoffs come and they get bounced out for those same reasons, I don't want no words for AJ because he done told you, just like some of the other former players who are not playing have told you, just like Nick Foles told you, just like Chris Long told you, just like Jason Avant told you, just like Seth Joyner at times has told you, just like anybody looking at the schematics of this office has told you.
Hmm.
That's why a lot of these other players have not got on AJ Brown the way that people would have gotten on TO back when that situation was happening because they know he's right. He's been right.
Hmm.
And it's not
Yeah.
because he just, people are like, oh, he's just smiling because he got his catches. No, dickheads. It's because he, it's because he knew exactly what problems were going to show up and it just showed up 5 or 6 weeks sooner than people probably thought it would against the
Yeah.
Cowboys.
Yep.
He got his catches. He wants to win. It's not just that he wants to win only if he gets his catches. No, it's like me getting my catches correlates with us winning because it means that I'm running wild, Smitty's running wild, and that opens things up for Saquon and Tate Bigsby in that offense who's already struggling with a bad offensive line. So if anything, if you're able to open up the passing game by being a little more creative, then you can make things easier for Saquon so he can't stack the box with 8 or 9 guys. Like what like people, especially when bad losses like this happen or they get wrapped up in a way a guy is handling himself in the media, they emote more than seeing what point the guy is making. And it's not because he's being selfish. Yeah, there are some selfish guys. I would say there are some selfish guys, yes, but I don't really think he's selfish in the way people think he is. He can just see the writing on the wall, and he's just very
Yeah.
blunt about it. That's the way I view
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I agree. He's more willing to put it out there and let you know how he feels. And I think that's go on the social media, yes, I agree. That was a mature way of doing it. But I like the way he put it out there when he had his little interview with the media. He just well, at what point are we as an offense gonna get going? When are we always going to have to, why do we always have to rely on the defense? And he even said, even late in the year, that's not going to happen. So, that's, you know, it's just the way it is. Like, you can't always rely. The defense, they can be good, but if you're always going to get three and out, three and out, three and out, the defense is eventually going to get tired, like we saw what happened with the Cowboy game.
Exactly.
So,
So, this is since we're getting in the holiday spirit. This is the ghost of let's say this is the ghost of Christmas past. It's not too late, but the signs are starting to show up. If we get to the point where we have to see the ghost of Christmas future, if we keep this up, then at some point, we won't have the storybook ending Scrooge had. It will be too late.
yeah, 100%.
That's it. So those that want to live in delusion, like some of the ones I was seeing on Reddit that were getting on AJ and whatnot, by all means. But if AJ's gone, what happens when the same thing happens next year when he's gone? Y'all didn't think about that, did you?
Mm-hmm. It'll be even worse.
Yeah. So let us know what you think, and we're gonna wrap this up and they better get it together for the next game. Till next time, y'all.